Welcome back, everyone, to our latest episode of the IT Mythbuster series. I believe we are on episode 15, and I am excited to be back with my friend Suresh GP from TaUB Solutions. Good to see you again, Suresh.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Always a pleasure to have this conversation. So what do we have for today? It seems to be quite a while, and I can't wait to see what's the hot topic that we're going to bust, or it's a myth today.
I think we've got a fun one on deck, and I actually forgot to introduce myself. I am Mike Fulton with CIO with Vernovus, and we're going to be talking today about a myth, or maybe not, that there is a clear career blueprint to become a CIO.
Wow. Well, we have to ask this, flip over this question back to you, because you're now becoming a CIO as part of and you've taken twists and turns to become a CIO. So do you think that there is a blueprint that you followed in your map to move towards this role? What is your take on this one?
I think it's a great question. And no, there's not been a clear blueprint. This is actually my current role at Vernovus, where I am the CIO, is my second time being a CIO throughout my career. But it's been a twisty, turny journey for me. I have gone from big company to small company. I've gone from project management, operations, application development, enterprise architecture, strategy, innovation. I've gone from business roles to technical roles. So yeah, for me personally, there's not been a clear path to get to where I'm at today. And I don't know, you coach a lot of CIOs. What's your experience? Do most CIOs get there following a straight path? Am I an anomaly, or am I more the norm?
Well, that's a great question, Mike. So I think there's no one size fits all, but then let's take a step back, right? A lot of people would want to do what is needed to become a CIO. So there is a kind of a time-tested path to go through and become a CIO, because most of the people want to become more certain on the way that they go into progress to do it. But I think we need to look at this particular part in a very different pair of lens. For example, you did talk about you've been in project management, you've been in operations, you've been in infrastructure, you've been in cloud and technology part. I think as a CIO, whoever is kind of progressing towards that career path will have to put that tenets very well to understand the different aspects that govern the entire life cycle and entire value chain. As long as you're able to understand that composition, that tenet, and are able to connect the dots between the whole thing, that's going to be instrumental if you want to elevate your level to a CIO. Because frankly, there are so much moving parts as a CIO, and it's very difficult to be the fulcrum or the nucleus and still know what's happening around without getting deep into the modalities of working. You know what I'm saying? So it's very intricate for people to have the fundamentals, the understanding, the nuances of how things work. And it's also changing. If I asked you 10 years before, a CIO's role could have been much more predictable. Today's the CIO's role is not predictable at all. So it is even more complex, isn't it, on these days to become a full-fledged CIO? That's my perspective.
I couldn't agree more. I think if we think about kind of scope of a CIO, right? And you and I have a lot of history with the IT for IT framework. Right. And if we look at the big picture from the way IT for IT describes it, the scope of the IT function is plan, build, deliver, and run, right? And so there's those four big capability areas, but then even over and above that, beyond that scope, a CIO also has to handle IT financial management and the finances. They have to be able to handle governance, risk, and compliance, the security aspects. They have to be able to handle talent management and the HR aspects, right? So all of these things are all different capabilities or that a CIO has to be able to engage with, interact with, be knowledgeable about. And one of the things that I think many people struggle with on this path to becoming a CIO is that we actually tend to silo ourselves off pretty well
Sure.
in the IT function, right? And we've talked about this on previous Mythbusters episodes, but people many times will do an entire 20 to 30-year career in the build capability, right? Doing application development and testing, right? Or maybe they'll spend the bulk of their career in the run capability, doing operations and focusing on operations or infrastructure. Or maybe they'll be more of the planners. They'll be architects or project managers or portfolio managers, right? People spend a lot of their time really focusing on those different silos, right? Creating, if we think about a common career metaphor, the T-shaped individual, right?
Correct.
People spend so much time focusing on the leg of the T
Correct.
versus the top of the T, right?
Correct.
And a good CIO has to be deeper at the top of the T and has to be more shallow at the depth, right? Because you can't really be as deep as you need to be across all the different areas. So you have to be you can't go an inch wide as a CIO, as a good CIO. You have to be able to go 100 feet deep, right? But you can't go 10,000 feet deep on everything, right? So how do you get to the right level of depth and knowledge there is an incredibly important part of the journey that people have to go through. And it's not natural. It's not normal for the way that a lot of people navigate their careers within IT.
Yeah. And for me, I think you're right that it's important that you move from that T-shaped profile to pie-shaped and comb-shaped because you have a broader understanding about the generalist aspect of it, but you also understand a little bit about everything to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, another dimension that I see people struggling, Mike, if you look at the CIO world today, they think technology is what CIO is all about. I don't think so. I think the business acumen in explaining why IT is going to be the driver is so important. A lot of CIOs struggle to communicate in business language, the right business acumen, and trying to build a use case where the business leaders are able to appreciate the whole part. And having said that, we also see a lot of CIOs sometimes do not get a seat at the table because the articulation of value becomes a big problem because you still put tick in the box of projects delivered on time and cost optimization. And you remember we talked about the cost center kind of a conversation and optimization. I think we have to radically move this from just talking about demand and supply to how do we take the business to the next league altogether. I think the CIOs today have to have that level of caliber to have the vision to take this plunge to do that. And if you don't have that appetite to take that risk and plunge into new initiatives and explore, I don't think they're going to fit the bill as part of a CIO. So I think it's going to be very difficult if you don't bring in that business mindset as well as the ability to take risk and have this entrepreneurial spirit to explore some of those uncharted territories. And that's going to be vital if you need to even thrive in the whole CIO ecosystem today.
Yeah, so I love the point you made around the value of IT. Maybe we should parking lot that and come back to that in another episode because I think that would be great. But to kind of build on what you were saying, right? If you look at some of the research online, a lot of different publications talk about the idea that there are different kinds of CIOs, right? One common way of splitting it out, sometimes they'll split it out into 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5, but in a very simple one, it talks about operational CIOs, transformational CIOs, and strategic CIOs, right? And what you described really was that journey from being an operational CIO to more of a transformational CIO up to really being a strategic CIO that's aligning with the business, helping drive strategy and all the different elements of that. But I think it's, while we all want to kind of, I shouldn't say we all, a lot of folks want to go on that journey, right? They want to become a strategic CIO. And a lot of businesses need their CIOs to be strategic CIOs.
Right.
Not every business wants or needs that.
Right.
I get a chance in my role here for Novus, where we work with a lot of different companies. We're a total talent solutions company. So we work with a lot of different companies looking at what talent they have and what talent they need.
Right.
And we have this conversation on a fairly regular basis around what kind of person do you need in that top IT slot?
Right.
Do you need someone that's an IT manager? And they'll a lot of times classify or clarify them as an IT manager rather than a CIO, because they see them as being more in the day-to-day, being more operational, being more keep the lights on.
Right.
Do you need a CIO that's more of a cost-cutting CIO, someone that can really take cost out of the system? Is it somebody that's more of a turnaround CIO, right? Someone that can see where you're at and really drive big change. The transformational CIO that we talked about earlier usually is more aligned to driving significant business transformations, right? Helping an ERP transformation really drive significant change in the company, for example, right? And then that strategic CIO being someone that really does have a seat at the table, right there along the CEO and their leadership team, helping understand in what ways can technology truly be used to leverage and transform a business, right? And so part of it is, A, what does your business need? And B, and not always the same thing, what does your business want? I've been at organizations where, no, I shouldn't say I've worked with organizations where what they really needed was more of a transformational CIO, but what they really wanted was someone that they could put off in the closet as more of a IT manager or an operational CIO. They didn't want someone to tell them that they were doing things wrong. They didn't want someone to make them change. And in today's day and age, I think you have to be open to driving change, leveraging technology, or your organization is not going to be successful long term.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very great perspective that you brought in terms of operational CIOs to strategic, transformation CIO to strategic CIO. I have a couple of things that I wanted to add was, today, every CIO is looking at the 3-year horizon. They want to come there, change everything, what was already stated, and then look at to create that impact. So what's typically happening is your CIO title is still saying a CIO, and it is not explicitly announced whether it's an operational CIO or a strategic CIO, because they don't want to be, typecasted like that.
Right.
But having said that, the part of the problem is the roles and responsibilities that you expect when you hire someone to actually things on ground is very different. And they have this whole part of it that they cannot do. And some of these CEOs cannot go to other organizations because they still kind of struggle to establish their identity, because they think that they don't know how long this will go around it. And this is like pretty uncharted territory. And they don't have the flexibility to move from an operational CIO to a transformational CIO or a strategic CIO because of the way that they have been working around. So in my opinion, I think that shift is not possible by a lot of people. They cannot move into that direction, though they would aspire to do it. And the constraints around the organizational structure, the culture of the organizations prevents them from moving this direction faster. So they get kind of lost in that part, and they get stick to what they are comfortable with. And that reduces the overall impact of the role of a CIO itself. And sometimes it's hard to say, Mike, that I've seen a lot of CIOs who don't even fit in the caliber of CIOs, but they have still the titles of CIO. So I'm thinking that are we mushrooming this whole aspect of everybody wants to be a CIO, or should we actually do a due diligence and say that this is actually the CIO and the rest of things are probably IT managers? I'm just thinking loud. We seem to have so much CIOs who do not fit the bill, in my opinion, because of these reasons.
Well, I mean, I think it really depends on what your objective is, right? Is your objective to normalize a role and a role description from the perspective of a big company?
Hmm.
Or is it to normalize it from the perspective of a small company? Is it to make sure that as people move from company to company, that when they use that CIO title, that you inherently know what that means, right? I mean, if that's what you're trying to do, what that implies to me is what I've seen in other industries where this kind of thing is an issue. It implies some sort of certification, some sort of governing board, some sort of criteria, right, for being a CIO in this case, or in other professions, being an accountant or being a doctor, right? There's a bar you have to cross to be able to say you are these things. Is that the path we want to go down? I don't know. And I think in the technology space, I think while I am intrigued by that as a concept, the number one thing I would be concerned about is how quickly things move and change in our space, right? How would you ever create a bar for people to get over when that bar is constantly moving and changing?
Correct. And the other part to it is that the CIO identity that we are establishing is going back to the part that everybody is trying their best to prove themselves as this is the CIO. And there is no something called as benchmarking. This is the CIO. So it's a moving target. It's an evolutionary part of it. And you have to play the long-term game. And at one point of the time, you want to play the long-term game, the board says, come on, show me results. So there is a constant tussle between what I want to do as a CIO for a long term, or should I just do something quick and dirty to come out of that and get some showcase and progress to do that. So in my opinion, I think the CIO is facing a lot of pressure that people look at from outside. That's a lucrative job to be done. But I'm telling you, the CIO is swarmed with competing priorities and stakeholders and balances. It's a nightmare, as I see a lot of more CIOs. So if you're talking about career blueprint, I'm not sure that it even fit in somewhere, because we are not even having any radar to even benchmark what we are talking about to have a CIO at the same level to measure and say, this is what a CIO looks like. So for me, this seems to be eluding this concept of what you called as a career blueprint, Mike.
I would agree. I think we can talk about some general concepts that we think a good CIO might have. I think a good CIO is going to have an understanding of the full scope and breadth of IT across plan, build, deliver, and run. They're going to understand financial management. They're going to understand talent management. A good CIO is going to have that executive presence, right? Where they can be in a conversation at the board level, at the executive level, and not sound like the IT geek that you want to stuff in the closet and feed them pizza and Mountain Dew, right? You want to have a CIO that has that ability to have some strategic thinking. Even in an operational CIO, it's important to think beyond the day-to-day and look out in that role towards the future. Maybe it's not quite as far as a true strategic CIO might look out, but you've got to have that sense, right? So I think we can point to some things that a CIO needs to be able to do, but a clear blueprint to get there, I think we're busting that myth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to be very clear. If you are an aspiring CIO, you're looking at a blueprint, that's not going to happen. You have your own unique path. And let's remember, each one of you have your own unique strength And how do you position that is going to be important. The way you articulate of what value you bring to the business and your stakeholders is super important. So don't be obsessed with going with path A and path B, because I think you can carve your own path and then move ahead. So
Well,
that,
and I think to your point, right, it's important that we lean into our strengths, right? All of us, our brains work in different ways,
right.
right? And by leaning into our strengths, we're able to be more successful in our jobs. We're able to have more fun at work. And by understanding what our strengths are and where our weaknesses are, we can find the right sort of partners to come alongside us on the journey that can complement us, that can help fill the gaps that we might have and help us provide a more well-rounded value to the organization overall.
Awesome. It's great talking to you, Mike. So we have busted this whole myth of career blueprint for becoming a CIO. So stay intact and charge yourself, play with your strength, and you will be all set to make an impact as a CIO. So good luck on that. And we will come back to you in our next episode of IT Mythbusters series. I hope you enjoy the series. If you have not watched the previous episodes, I would definitely recommend you to go back and subscribe to this channel and post your comments of the next new topic that you would like us to pick up, and we will take this forward. Thank you so much, Mike, for that session. And it was absolutely a delight to have you and discuss about some of this hot topic.
Always a pleasure, Suresh. Take care.